Welcome back to more UCL Fantasy content. This will be my team selection for Matchday 2, and I've got several options this week. Use the 2 free transfers or activate the Limitless chip. I'm not going to be using the wildcard until later in the competition. This could be in Matchday 5, so pretty much the midpoint of the league phase, or in the knockout stages. Check out my chip strategy guide to see the best times to use the Limitless and wildcard chips, as well as an overview of both boosters. Smash the like button of this video and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this to a 300 likes and to keep on pushing towards 30,000 subscribers and beyond. Also join me for the deadline stream on Tuesday, 2 hours before kickoff. It would be a pleasure to have you on board, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast if you enjoy my content and want to support the channel even further. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. One of the only disappointments in Matchday 1 were both of my goalkeepers actually. Blažević blanked and got 2 points as Red Bull Salzburg got demolished in Matchday 1, whilst my first goalkeeper, Di Gregorio, conceded in the last few minutes against PSV Eindhoven. Otherwise, he would have stayed in my team. He ended up outscoring Blažević anyway with 3 points compared to 2. And I still think this is one of the best goalkeeper pairings until Matchday 8, but there are some concerns about Di Gregorio starting every single match in the Champions League, as Thiago Motta, the Juventus manager, likes to rotate his goalkeepers. We've seen that a lot in Serie A, and I hope that doesn't happen in the Champions League as well. With Blažević, you won't get many clean sheets, but there are some good fixtures, and the most important thing is he doesn't clash with Di Gregorio because they play on different days until the final match day of the league phase, and that's why I went for him in the first place. Arsenal had a very tricky week facing Spurs away, Atalanta away, and Manchester City also away from home in the span of 1 week. They got a clean sheet at Atalanta in a 0-0 draw, with David Raya saving a penalty and making an incredible double save to preserve that Arsenal clean sheet. Saliba got 8 points in the end, but Gabriel actually got 9. I think these two are absolute monsters at the back. They'll get many ball recoveries. Gabriel has more attacking threat than Saliba, but I think over the course of the season, we could see the Frenchman get more ball recoveries than his Brazilian counterpart. But either one is a great option at 5.5 million. You've also got alternatives in the Arsenal defence. David Raya in goal is another one to consider, but Saliba might be my favourite still in UCL Fantasy. The second defender in my starting 11 was Cubarsí, who blanked as Monaco won 2-1 against Barcelona, with Eric Garcia being sent off. That changed the game, and after that, it was damage limitation. Ter Stegen is now injured for a couple of months, possibly until the end of the season, so we'll see Iñaki Peña between the sticks, and there are rumours of Wojciech Szczesny signing for Barcelona in the next couple of weeks. Coming out of retirement, he would be a great signing for Barcelona, and they've got so many injury problems at the moment. They rotated heavily in the recent La Liga game and they lost 4-2 as a consequence, but they're still top of that table with the likes of Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid breathing down their necks. My final defender in the starting 11 was Grimaldo, who got 12 points courtesy of a clean sheet and a goal away to Feyenoord. A very impressive result by Bayer Leverkusen, who won 4-0. So the likes of Grimaldo, Frimpong and Florian Wirtz were great assets in Matchday 1. Another disappointment was Barcola, who was subbed off after 63 minutes against Girona. There have been some criticisms towards him, and Luis Enrique actually launched a very staunch defence about him in his press conference, because Barcola's had a great start to the season in Ligue 1. He scored once again over the weekend, and it's worth mentioning that Ousmane Dembélé will be dropped from the Paris Saint-Germain squad to face Arsenal this week due to disciplinary reasons. That could be a massive blow to Paris Saint-Germain, but Barcola is sort of a talismanic figure now for the club with the departure of Kylian Mbappe in the summer. I don't like Barcola against Arsenal away necessarily, but he can score in that fixture, and beyond that, you've got some decent home games like PSV in Matchday 3. But next up in my midfield is Yamal, who scored despite the fact that Barcelona went down to 10 men, 8 points overall. I'm so happy with this addition, and to be honest, he is the most highly owned asset in the game with good reason. He's 7.5 million and makes a mockery of that price tag. He's 17 years of age and plays like a 27-year-old. He is growing in confidence and adding goals to his game, which is something he lacked at the Euros. He was a great playmaker and dribbler in that tournament, and the fact he's now got an eye for goal, I think that spells trouble for the rest of the Champions League. But my third midfielder was Joshua Kimmich, who got 12 points as a 6 million option. He is fantastic value. He can get ball recoveries, player of the match awards, a few goals here and there, and also assists from set pieces and open play. He is a fantastic option, and even the additional clean sheet point from time to time is possible with Bayern Munich And finally, another great option is Florian Wirtz, who got 18 points with 2 goals against Feyenoord and a fantastic performance to kickstart his Champions League debut with Bayer Leverkusen, and he's a great option for the rest of the league phase. Ultimately, several players in my starting 11 did blank, so Blažević, Kubarsi, Barcola and Erling Haaland facing Inter Milan, but that was always a possibility, facing one of the best teams in Europe. Now, Inter Milan have been a bit shaky in recent weeks. They lost the Milan derby for the first time in several years, and they also got a draw in their recent Serie A meeting. So they aren't looking imperious as they have done in the last couple of years, but they're still a very tough cookie to crack, and Man City were unable to score in that 0-0 draw at the Etihad in Matchday 1, but now you've got some plum fixtures for Manchester City, and despite Rodri missing the rest of the season, that's a massive blow. Kevin De Bruyne is still an injury doubt, and you've got other problems like Nathan Ake. Erling Haaland can still score at will, and without Rodri in the first 4 game weeks in FPL, he scored 9 goals. So despite it being a massive blow for Erling Haaland's prospects in the long term, I still think he'll score plenty of goals in the Champions League this season. The same goes for a certain Harry Kane, who just went absolutely ballistic in Matchday 1 and got 21 points. He is an injury doubt for Matchday 2 against Aston Villa, but he was asked about this just after the game, and he said he should be available in that match, and I think he will be. He is so important to Bayern Munich and one of the best strikers in world football. It's probably between these two and Kylian Mbappe for that top spot in this position. Now, Mbappe is injured for several weeks, and Real Madrid also have another injury concern after the Madrid derby, with Thibaut Courtois missing the next couple of weeks, and he won't be back until the international break. Now, the final forward is a certain Gyökeres, who got a goal and 9 points overall with the Player of the Match award against Lille. He faces PSV away next. Now, there are some injury concerns with the Sporting wingers, even Pedro Gonçalves, but I believe he is fine, and he's just been rested and trying to be prepped for that Matchday 2 fixture, as Sporting are looking to qualify to the knockout stages, and they could even do it automatically without playing the playoffs. They are a good team with some good players like Gyökeres and Pedro Gonçalves, and I think that duo is arguably one of the best you will see throughout Europe. With Harry Kane being my captain and delivering 42 points overall, I got 118 points in Matchday 1, so a very good start. My rank is 26,000 despite getting such a high score. It goes to show that Matchday 1 was full of great assets and so many different avenues to points. I had several blanks in my starting 11, but still a lot of consistency from some of my players. And of course, the front three, mainly Harry Kane and Gyökeres, delivered big time. Florian Wirtz and Grimaldo were also very helpful on the Thursday, but now it's worth bearing in mind we're not going to have any more Thursday matches in the Champions League for the rest of the season. It was only a Matchday 1 thing, and we've only got 2 shots at the captaincy and 1 substitution window in Matchday 2 and beyond. We also get 2 free transfers in every single matchday throughout the league phase. Everything is covered in my chip strategy guide because the transfers do change for the knockout stages, and the same goes for other aspects of UCL Fantasy. Let's now head over to my team selection for Matchday 2 with 2 free transfers being proposed, but there is the possibility of me activating the Limitless this week. Despite several concerns, I'd still recommend the goalkeeper duo of Blažević and Di Gregorio, but it's worth mentioning that Blažević won't get you many clean sheets, and with Di Gregorio, there is the slight possibility of rotation with Perin in the Champions League. If that happens, I'd just rather go to a Kobel or David Raya amongst other goalkeeper options we have. Even Alisson could be worth considering, and Courtois once he's back from injury, and just stick with them as your main goalkeeper and not really worry too much about having 2 rotating goalkeeper options. I just recommend this because it allows you another chance of getting a clean sheet and some UCL fantasy points in the goalkeeper position by having 2 shots at it, by making substitutions and having 2 goalkeepers playing on different days. On paper, my defensive line looks fairly solid, but I have some issues with this, especially if I make certain transfers, which leads me to have 5 players who all play on the Tuesday 1st of October and none of them will play on the 2nd. That might not be so bad in Matchday 2, but for Matchdays 3 and beyond, when it actually reverses and these players are actually going to feature on the Wednesday, that's not going to fill me with confidence. I'd rather have more players on the Tuesday than the Wednesday, so you can sub out the lowest scoring ones for those yet to play on the following day. So that's something to bear in mind for future match days, and maybe it could cause me to use the Limitless in Matchday 3 as one particular example. But Saliba, at home to PSG. It's not the greatest fixture you'll ever see, but Arsenal do raise their level for the biggest opponents, and they've also got one of the best defences in Europe. They conceded twice to Leicester after being 2-0 up over the weekend, but they still got some late goals to win that game 4-2. And over the course of the season, they're keeping multiple clean sheets despite being down to 10 men in a few games and facing Brighton and Man City in those instances. They still were able to hold out for draws with those circumstances. And in the other games like Aston Villa and Spurs away, they kept clean sheets at some of the toughest grounds in English football. My second defender would be Cubarsí. Barcelona look a bit shaky defensively, but they're scoring a lot of goals in every single match day. And I do like Cubarsí at 4.5 million with a plum fixture against Young Boys at home. He can get ball recoveries and some clean sheets along the way, so he remains my favourite 4.5 million defender. But there is some stiff competition with the likes of Rico Lewis. If he can start week in, week out, I'd highly recommend him as well. I had him in UCL Fantasy last season and he performed very well for me, particularly in the group stages. And another one would be Acerbi from Inter Milan, who could be one of my transfers in, facing Red Star Belgrade at home. But Inter Milan haven't been at their very best, as I mentioned earlier, but I still like Acerbi as that budget defender to partner Cubarsí in central defence. And finally, Grimaldo is still a great option. Despite Bayer Leverkusen not being the most solid defensive team in the world, his attacking potential more than makes up for it, and they kept a clean sheet in matchday 1 against a decent team in Feyenoord. It's worth emphasising that this team isn't fully locked in because Barcola could be making way, and I might make a transfer in this position to a 7.5 midfielder. Pulisic has been in great form this season for AC Milan, scoring in virtually every single game, and even in the Copa America he had a good record in the group stages despite the USA being knocked out so early on. And you've also got Rafinha if you want to double up on the Barcelona attack against Young Boys, but just bear in mind they face Bayern Munich in the following match day, which will be a much tougher test. That goes without saying. Barcola can score against Arsenal away from home. He is PSG's most dangerous player. He's got pace, a lot of trickery, and at his age, he is showing a lot of potential. He's only going to get better. His decision-making can improve, and it might not be to the same level as a certain Lamine Yamal, but he is still a very top talent, and he can score in a lot of these games throughout the league phase. I bought him with good reason in matchday 1. It didn't work out, and I might be patient with this pick and give him time until match days 3 or 4. If he doesn't produce by that stage, then I could sell him. But ultimately, you have so many options in terms of mid-price midfielders, and especially when you go towards the 9 million to 10 million midfielders like Salah, Bellingham and Saka. So this is a position I could end up changing before the match day 2 deadline, but I think patience could be rewarded with this particular pick. My second option in this position would be Yamal, who faces Young Boys at home. He was on the bench over the weekend, but he still scored as a substitute. It was a consolation goal, but his consistency has been incredible with 4 goals and 5 assists in La Liga, just 7 starts in that competition so far, and of course 8 appearances overall. I think he's the best 7.5 midfielder alongside Florian Wirtz. It will be a very tough competition between those two, and I think they'll both be amongst the highest scoring midfielders by the end of the season. Next up is a certain Jude Bellingham, who hasn't really been the same so far in this campaign. He hasn't scored a single goal for Los Merengues. He's got a few assists though, including in the UEFA Super Cup final against Atalanta, and I still back him as a UCL fantasy asset, but he's not going to be anywhere near to the same levels as last season in terms of value when he was priced at 7.5 million as well. He now costs 9 million, which is still underpriced based on what he did in his first season at Real Madrid, but you just want to see him add more goals to his game. And with Mbappe missing out, I think Bellingham could play certain games in a more advanced position, and Lille away could be a nice opportunity to do that. Maybe they could go for him just behind Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr., or possibly even alongside Vinicius as a 2-man forward line. But I think Rodrigo won't be benched, especially with Mbappe missing out in the next couple of weeks, and you just want to see Bellingham get on the score sheet in match day 2. But finally, I'm going for Florian Wirtz. He is one of my favourite midfielders, period, not just at 7.5 million. And actually, at this moment in time, I think Yamal and Wirtz are better than Bellingham, and this could continue throughout the rest of the league phase. I like the fixtures for all these players except Barcola, who is away from home, and I've got a clash with Saliba. Towards the very end, I'll show you some alternative transfers I could make, which would involve getting a midfielder for Barcola, strengthening this position, but it would also mean being a bit weaker at the back. Despite blanking very recently for the first time this season, Victor Gyökeres is still a great option at 7.5 million, facing PSV away. He is a fixture-proof player and he has some tough games later on in the campaign against Manchester City and Arsenal, but he could score in those games. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. He's one of the most prolific strikers in Europe. He's on penalties. He can get the odd assist. He's one of the most talismanic figures you'll see in any team in the Champions League. So I really recommend him as a UCL fantasy option, and I do back him to score in most of these games throughout the league phase. And the same goes for Erling Haaland, who's got one of the best fixtures, despite it being away from home in Matchday 2, and this extends all the way to Matchday 8. There might be the odd tough game here or there, but ultimately I think Manchester City could win every single match from now until the end of the league phase and carry this form on to the knockout stages. He's a great captaincy option on the Tuesday, but we do have alternatives even with this 15-man squad, and I discuss all the best captains throughout all UCL fantasy players in my best wildcard and Limitless team podcasts. The bench is always crucial in UCL fantasy, and I've got Di Gregorio, who faces RB Leipzig away from home, Harry Kane, Kimmich and Kim Min-jae. That triple up in Bayern Munich looked amazing for Matchday 1, but not so much against Aston Villa and Barcelona in the next 2 match days. Ideally, I would get rid of Kim Min-jae, who was so disappointing against Dynamo Zagreb, conceding twice, only getting 2 ball recoveries. He was amazing in this particular metric last season, but he hasn't really shown it so far, so there are some regrets not going for Schlotterbeck instead of Kim Min-jae. And I think Anton, who was in my team originally, he was a big disappointment, only coming on as a substitute. He got so many ball recoveries in such a short space of time, and it's a case of what could have been if he had started in that 3-0 win over Club Brugge. Harry Kane is a slight doubt for this game against Aston Villa, but Bayern Munich gave a positive update very recently. They didn't say if he would miss the Aston Villa game, but I firmly believe he will be available. I do have contingency plans just in case he does miss out, and I think Lewandowski would be my top tip to recommend him for a 1 match day punt, and even longer term at 9.5 million. I think Lewandowski offers tremendous value, and Vinicius Jr. away to Lille is still a great option as well. So those would be my top 2 replacements for Harry Kane if I need to sell him, and Kim Min-jae could be replaced by a Schlotterbeck or another 5 million or 4.5 million option, but I think Acerbi will be coming in regardless for either Anton or Kim Min-jae, and of course Barcola is on the chopping block. It was merely a matchday 1 punt in the first place. He does face Arsenal now, but I still like him longer term. I could see him scoring a few goals in the league phase. But let's talk about the captaincy. On the Tuesday, I'd be looking to go for Erling Haaland, although Yamal is a great alternative who I would be considering. He got that rest a few days ago, which is very good to see. Only a few minutes to keep that match sharpness up, and he scored another goal, so he's in terrific form at the moment. So it's one of Erling Haaland or Yamal for the Tuesday, and I'd probably change this to Jude Bellingham on the Wednesday. But if Harry Kane is fit, I'd probably go to him as my captain, despite that tough away fixture against Aston Villa, and Jude Bellingham hasn't scored a single goal so far this season. So I think the Tuesday captains look much better on paper, especially when you're looking at the fixture. So I really hope that pays off like it did with Harry Kane back in matchday 1, so I don't need to worry about the captaincy whatsoever and just bring out my lowest scoring players from my starting 11 for those yet to play on my bench. We could be here all day if I discuss all the possible transfers I could make, but essentially, if I replace Barcola, it would be to Rafinha or another 7.5 million midfielder as a 1 match day punt, because I don't like triple Barcelona against Bayern Munich in match day 3, especially when I have 2 Bavarians myself with these set of transfer plans with Harry Kane and Joshua Kimmich. I would sell Kim Min-jae to Acerbi to fund that move to Rafinha, but it's still not the greatest for match day 3. Now, having said that, these 2 transfers could lead me towards using the Limitless in match day 3, so that kind of negates that issue, and I could navigate this period in the best possible way. But it's all subjective, and ultimately, I think these transfers in match day 2 could determine my ultimate chip strategy, especially in regards to the Limitless chip in the short term. My plan regardless is to use it between match days 2 to 7. I wouldn't recommend using the Limitless in match day 8, as I discussed in the chip strategy guide, because everyone plays at the same time, so you can't make substitutions or change the captaincy. So I think you lower your ceiling of the Limitless chip by playing it in match day 8, and if you use it later in the competition, you've got fewer options to choose from, and also less good fixtures, essentially fewer good fixtures, because you've got the best teams left in the competition for the round of 16 and beyond, and I don't think it's worth using it during the knockout playoff rounds in match days 9 and 10. But you can check out all of that in the chip strategy guide, because I break it down in detail. And if Harry Kane were to miss out, which seems quite unlikely, I would go to Robert Lewandowski, Vinicius Jr., or possibly Lautaro Martinez, who's got a great home fixture against Red Star Belgrade. but his recent record for Inter Milan isn't great. He scored a brace over the weekend, but before that, I think he had 1 goal in 17 matches or something like that, which is very concerning and surprising actually, since he is a Ballon d'Or contender. But I'm very happy with this 50-man squad. I could play the Limitless if a few injury problems arise, like Harry Kane, and it seems like he's going to miss out, but I think I'm in a good position. I don't need to use the Limitless just yet, and with 2 free transfers, by buying Rafinha and a Serbi, or possibly by just focusing on my defensive line, as I showed you earlier, I could build a very strong squad for Matchday 2 and beyond. I'll lock in my final team during the deadline stream, and I'll be updating patrons and channel members as soon as possible about any updates and transfers I make, even if I decide to play the Limitless, for example. But let me know down in the comment section below if you would go for Schlotterbeck in for Kim Min-jae, as well as a Serbi, so similar to what I discussed throughout most of this video, or towards the very end with those alternatives, buying Rafinha for Barcola, keeping Anton, and selling Kim Min-jae to a Serbi or Rico Lewis to fund that move. I'd be very interested to see your thoughts, but thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. I promise to get this video to 300 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, and the code is cCaFxb. And you can show more support by leaving a 5-star review on my Spotify podcast. That would be greatly appreciated. As always, a huge shout out to all the channel members and patrons, as well as the super chatters in my UCL Fantasy and FPL streams. It's worth mentioning that if you only use 1 free transfer this week, or actually don't make any transfers at all, you would actually roll 1 transfer for the following match day and have 3 transfers overall. You cannot stockpile more than that, and you can only roll transfers in the league phase. You can't do this later in the competition from match day 9 and beyond in the knockout playoff rounds, as well as the knockout stages. So it's worth mentioning that, and it's all covered in my how to play guide and also the chip strategy video I made very recently. Be sure to check them out if you're unsure about anything in UCL Fantasy, and join me for the deadline stream on Tuesday. It'd be great to see you there to answer all your questions and finalize our teams for Matchday 2. I wish you all the best of luck for the upcoming deadline and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.